Hi, Yonis. I have a very special guest with us today. I am so excited to introduce Dr. Kristy Cromblin. She is a married mother of two, finishing her residency over at the University of Alabama in Birmingham. I'm so excited to have her. I think it's so important for us to bridge the divide that some of us have with the medical field in our community. Now, we're in the hood, so we know that sometimes we try to go the holistic route and it doesn't work out. And then you feel unheard. I get it. She gets it. They get it. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about how is it that we can bridge our health with the medical field. We have Dr. Kristy with us. Welcome. Dr. Kristy is great. I'm so excited to have you. I mean, I've talked to different doctors. I'm a big advocate of being a voice for yourself, standing up for yourself, opening up for yourself. And sometimes it doesn't work out. A lot of times that, a lot of people who DM me, because again, I sell holistic products to try to help balance. And I always, always go back and say, you still have to talk to your doctor. And some of them are feel like, well, I'm uncomfortable talking to my doctor. I don't know what to say to my doctor. I have fibroids, you're suggesting surgery. I don't want to have surgery. What are the alternatives? And it boils down to you gotta have to talk to the practicing doctor. Now, when it comes to practicing medicine, my doctor once told me practicing does not mean we are miracle workers. It means that we're here to work with you. We both have a goal for you to get to a certain point when you're not feeling well. Let's talk about this. What does that look like and you as a doctor and you have patients? What is the biggest concern that a lot of, particularly women of color, have when it comes to, again, bridging this divide between the medical community and our community?
Right. So I've had the opportunity to practice in inner cities like St. Louis, in Montgomery, Alabama. And then I've also had some encounters with patients here in Baltimore, where I am right now doing a 4-week rotation. And one of the central themes that I see in patients that are a little bit more guarded and not as trusting is that they've had bad experiences, so to speak. They've had less than favorable experiences. And I want to just take a moment to just acknowledge that, to say that it is warranted. And I feel that the onus is on the healthcare professionals to win those patients back. I think that that's something that we need to keep in the back of our mind. I like to try to approach a person according to their life experience. They can't help what they don't know. You don't know what you don't know. So, and I
Right.
think as the I don't want to use the expression bigger person in the room, but I think as the healthcare professional, we have to be mindful of that. It's not just treating the body, it's also treating the mind as well. And sometimes we have to just kind of see where that patient is so that we can make them more comfortable. So I said all that to say that sometimes we just have to take a break and pause. Maybe this person is acting out and saying the things that they're saying that are quite offensive sometimes. We saw that during COVID. Maybe they're doing that because they're scared. Don't take it personal. So that's one of the things that, we have to talk to ourselves about in the healthcare professional. But to go back to your original question, one of the things I would like people to know, yes, your doctor was right. It's a practice. We don't know everything. We're not perfect and we can't work miracles all the time. That's why there's so much money that's sent out for research grants. We're constantly researching ways to improve medicine. Until we're all walking this earth completely healed with no problems, then we're going to be doing research. And so, one of the things that I would like for the people listening to know is that it's very important for you to find a doctor. I know that can be very stressful to find the right doctor that you can connect with, one that you don't necessarily feel judged. Now, everybody judges, people say that all the time, but maybe you don't feel outrightly judged and you open to be able to express your concerns. That could take some time and it could take some frustration, but I think that's going to be the ultimate goal. The other thing that I would like for just to kind of give some general advice is that it's very important to know what's going on with your body. If you have to go in with a pen and a pad every single time, please keep a journal, because what they'll find is that when you're very unaware, they won't spend the time to tell you, or spend that time to educate you on certain things. They'll feel like they have to, and I say they, healthcare professionals will feel like they have to go through an entire anatomy and physiology course just to drive home a point of what's going on with you. I've seen it happen. When I visit the doctor with family members, my parents, I've seen how dismissive they are. I never reveal my background. I just observe and I let them be the doctor. So
Okay.
that's one of the things, showing that you're in tune. That is going to be so important. It also keeps them on their toes.
Okay. Okay. So before we jump into the bigger concerns with women that I get questions about all the time, I know that doctors are busy. Again, I get it. I know that there's two sides to it because sometimes a lot of women, they feel very unheard, they feel very rushed. Just to give our viewers and listeners a perspective, how many patients can some doctors see in one day?
Anywhere from about 25 to 30 in a very busy practice. The numbers have quite changed quite a bit because there's now some doctors' offices will have a setup where there's nurse visits only. So that's taken the load off of a lot of doctors. And so you may see them climb up to like 50. There are some doctors who have seen 50 patients alone years ago, but now there has been a huge shift in medicine, especially around 2012, 2010, where every aspect of medicine and patient care, there was the stakes were higher.
Yeah.
So what nurses are doing now, doctors may have done 2010, and before. What nurses did in 2010, medical assistants are doing now, so to speak.
Yeah.
So there's been the bar has been raised in medicine, and so a lot of things, a lot of aspects of patient care can be handled by paraprofessionals and other professionals that assist the doctors. So back to your original question, though, because sometimes I can go very detailed. I apologize if I'm doing that. I'm a teacher naturally, so I love to teach. But on average, I would say about 25 to 30 patients. Yeah.
That's a
And
lot.
that
Like
is a lot,
again,
especially when you have a patient that comes in. And I do want to say this really quickly, because this will help bridge that gap you were talking about. When a patient comes in, maybe they haven't seen the doctor in about 2 to 3 years, and they've got a list of concerns. I love it. They've written down their concerns, but the doctor's only going to want to address the most important and immediate concern in that appointment. Maybe two, maybe three, but they likely won't be able to address all your concerns. So please don't feel dismissed. There's a huge burden on doctors that is beyond their control. Insurance companies actually run the show. So doctors have to have a certain amount of things documented a certain way in order to get paid for that visit. Many visits go unpaid.
what?
So yeah, so that's why there's this time schedule. If they spend 30 minutes in the room with every patient, that doctor will not have any type of quality of life, and that doctor will run themselves in the grave at an early age.
You know, see, and I think that's what a lot of people don't know. I spent about 15 years in academia, a little over 15 years in academia. And I remember we used to have faculty meetings. We said, who works harder? Is it the math professors, the English professors, the English professors? And they're like, we come in, we lecture, and we go home with work. We have to do this. And it's a fight to the death of who works hard. Of course, shout out to English department. We felt like we worked the hardest because we have to grade not one paper, but 24 per class. So you got to think about it. These papers are not one page. They can be from 5 pages to 10, and think about 25 students, 5 classes. Do the math here, people. Who's working harder? I cannot imagine because nobody's going to be sick and probably be upset if I slack, if I rush through something, if I throw everybody an A and I'm done with it. Nobody's really hurt. However, a doctor, uh, you're talking 5 days a week, 25 patients and up. That's a lot of people. And then you've
That's
got
a lot.
about a small block of time. And I empathize with that. I do understand too, on the other side, it's like, that ain't my problem as a patient. I'm here to address what I need. I need your help to do this, and I need your help to do that, which is what a lot of my students say. They don't care that I have 100 other students. I need your help with this now. And but it does humanize a doctor. My uncle is a medical surgeon in Haiti, and he's like, you'd be surprised at how many times people expect me to basically work a miracle. And he said, everywhere I go, the second they find out I'm a doctor, they want to tell me all their symptoms. I'm like,
This is true.
I didn't even ask for all this. Like, I'm not even your doctor. I don't know. And people just, it can be very overwhelming. And for this, I understand where the not, I want to say the burden, but the heavy load is on the doctor. So how is it that a patient can recognize that, like you said, take notes, top priority issues that you're having, maybe not everything, but top things that they can address. And I guess keep in mind how much time the doctor has. Can we ask the doctor, how much time do we have?
Yeah, I think that's a very fair question. I think that's a very, very fair question. And I also think just to encourage and strengthen a good patient physician relationship, that you have your journal there and you are allowed you let the doctor know, what are the things that you've noticed with your health lately? What are your concerns? And be very succinct and to the point with it. You may even have to rehearse how you're going to say it, but I think that will help a lot because then you'll have that time at the end to, address any other concerns that may have come up that you didn't know were there. So I think that would really, really help.
Okay, okay, cool. I've had surgery for my fibroids, and then they grew back, you know?
Mhm.
And while my fourth pregnancy, one of them was there throughout the whole pregnancy. And I talked about this before, and I said, the doctor was just basically every ultrasound, it was check on the baby, check on the fibroid, check on the baby, check on the fibroid. And they kept an eye on it because the third pregnancy caused the miscarriage. I mean, the third pregnancy, the fibroid caused the miscarriage. So they kept a close eye on it when I saw different specialists throughout my pregnancy. I didn't know what PCOS was. I didn't understand blood sugar levels, didn't understand high blood pressure. When I had a myomectomy, because they had to get rid of that fibroid, I asked the
Mhm.
doctor, is there a holistic route to basically not having the surgery? Because I was so scared that I'm going to put my body in danger or I might lose my uterus or one of my ovaries due to this. And she said, you can shrink it. That's a possibility, which I have shrunk with yonistimine before fibroids. But she said, you have to think about where this fibroid is, where it is on the uterus that caused miscarriage. You can shrink it, but it can grow back in the same spot. And she said, getting the myomectomy, I'm basically taking it out the root, like a tree.
Mhm.
We're uprooting it, it's gone, it will not grow there again. When it comes to Black women and women of color, really, but particularly Black women and fibroids, this is a problem. I can't tell you how, I think almost everyone I know has had a fibroid or a cyst. And what are some signs, I should say, we need to look out for before it gets to the point of myomectomies or even hysterectomies when it comes to
Yeah.
fibroids?
So the first comment I want to make is that I applaud her for saying that you can shrink it. Most doctors will tell you there's nothing you could do about it, because they do know that there are a lot of people that are attempting to shrink them or rid them holistically, and that has not shown a huge amount of success. I'm not sure about shrinking, so that would be something I need to go back and revisit. But the last
Mhm.
time I did look at that, I didn't see anything that showed any successful rates for shrinking them. So that's interesting. I'm glad that she told you that. The second thing is, yes, you're right. I used to do data analysis for Johns Hopkins in the surgery department, and I have seen it seems to be a disproportionate amount of women of color with fibroids. I'm really, really trying to wrap my brain to figure out what is that link. So some people will say that it could be related to inflammation. They say that some diseases or all diseases have some type of inflammation link. I did research Dr. Sebi for quite a while. So to your listeners who are believers in Dr. Sebi's methods, I do give that credits as well. Um, what are some signs to look for in the beginning, early on? The signs, if any, are very, but as the fibroids begin to grow, they do tend to cause disruptions in the cycle. They can contribute to the individual having heavy cycles. As they become larger, the cycles can become even more heavy. One of the things, and this kind of ties in with probably one of our later subjects, that I would love for your listeners to be aware of is noticing the difference between dark blood and bright blood. Typically, when we have a cycle, we see dark blood. Usually it's brown sometimes because it's old. So let's see, the time lapse from the time that the blood sheds from the lining of the uterus, from the times that it actually releases from the body, the darker the blood will be. So if you're looking at blood that's pretty dark to brown, that blood likely shed sometime and it's slowly sloughing off from the lining of the uterus. But when it's
Okay.
bright, that looks more like active bleeding. And it also looks like there's something hindering that blood. I'm sorry, excuse me on that. Something not hindering that blood from slowly moving out, but something that's causing that blood to move faster. So that is a huge difference to notice. I don't know if any of your listeners have noticed that, but when you see bright red blood, that is more indicative of a pathological condition, and that could be something that they need to get more attention for.
Oh, I used to think bright red blood was mean. This is gonna sound so ignorant. Like it was clean. Like the brighter, the redder, the better. And then I remember reading an article about it being fresh blood, and you're probably better off with like darker blood. And I'm like, well, I was wrong. I was dead
Yeah,
wrong. And then, but then
but I can see
again,
why you thought that.
right, because I'm thinking bright red, healthy, and was kind of watery. Um, but then again, I was suffering with fibroids. So that makes sense. And women with endometriosis, that's a whole other struggle because they're dealing with pain, bleeding, heavy periods, blood sugar. Some of them are even pre-diabetic as well.
Mhm.
For endometriosis, is the early signs physical pain? Because for
Yes.
PCOS, it's heavy bleeding. Because I used to have periods so bad, even the minute I got my period. My mom was so upset because the doctor suggested she put me on birth control pills because that was the only way I'd be able to go to school during my period. And she's like, my mom, I grew up in a Haitian household, so she was just like, you better not go and have sex. Like, well, but it was the only relief I could have. So from the time I was like 13 to 20 something, like 10 years straight, I was on birth control and they gave me a very low dosage, but it just would
Mhm.
ease it. And I'm not saying that I didn't have any cramps at all, but it was much better than me laying in bed, hovering over and like holding my stomach, and I couldn't go to school. Like I think one time I
Absolutely.
was at school, the teacher let me lay underneath her desk when I was in seventh grade because I was in so much pain.
Oh,
So
wow.
only option at the time. And I wondered if the birth control affected me later on in life because I was on some hormones for so long. But what back then, late 90s, early 2000s, what was the options? Um, and then so with PCOS, I ended up because I gained weight. It was so hard to lose weight. And I learned about blood sugar and how that also affected my periods, my pregnancies as well, becoming pre-diabetic and had to readjust everything to not get diabetes. They literally said I'm on the cuff, so you have to lose weight, you have to change your diet, couldn't eat carbs, things like that. But for endometriosis, is it because I know a lot of women with endometriosis and they're in pain. So are there early signs for that? Is there confusion with endometriosis and PCOS?
No, they're two separate conditions, and the pain that you typically see with endometriosis is that there are little blood vessels that are implanting on different parts of the tissues or different sites throughout the pelvic cavity. So they actually are very responsive to changes in your hormones, your sex hormones like estrogen and progesterone. So during certain parts of the cycle, our 28-day cycle is our typical time frame. Some people may have a 21, some people may have a variation of the 28-day cycle. But at certain parts of our cycle, our estrogen level will decline or it will increase, and the blood vessels that are designed to respond to that will either constrict or dilate. And so when they're constricting and those blood vessels are implanted on different parts of the pelvic cavity, they will cause pain. Sometimes they're in the anus. And so some individuals will have endometriosis that's there in the anus. And so when they have a bowel movement, it's painful. Sometimes they're on the bladder. So when they go to use the bathroom and urinate, it's painful. And of course, goes without saying during sexual intercourse. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So there
those are
is,
implants that respond to our hormones, and when they contract, they cause pain.
wow. So the earlier signs for endometriosis, because I believe I read that once you're diagnosed with these things, there's no cure. Like you live with it really. Do you adjust your life to having it? Is that accurate?
So we do surgery. Surgery can be, for the most part, curative in stages that are low, like a low stage endometriosis. But a lot of times, by the time the individual comes to the doctor's office, they have multiple cysts, endometriotic cysts.
Mhm.
But I have patients that have gotten resolved after some years. I've actually, some patients, it'll come back and they'll just end up just removing their uterus. Hopefully, it's confined to just the uterus and not the bladder or the rectal area. So those
Okay.
individuals where it's just confined to the uterus, the pelvic cavity surrounding the uterus, those individuals have seen. I'm reluctant to use the word cure, but they have seen some resolution. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So, well, because I did interview a young woman who overcame a lot of her endometriosis, and she did have a baby, as she went through working with her doctors on how to manage her endometriosis. And
Hmm.
many women, they feel like it's a death sentence for motherhood for them. It's a death sentence for like even just getting relief because it's like, well, I'm diagnosed with this. I don't know how to live with this. And the only way to get out of it is to have a hysterectomy. And a lot of women, when they're diagnosed at a young age, they don't want to. You know what I mean? They're like, I want to have kids. And then there's multiple reasons. Like I can speak on PCOS, but endometriosis, it's tough. It's very tough. So the thing I'm assuming is you have to try to trace the early signs. I had a young woman pretty much blame her mother for not taking care of this when she was young. My mother didn't know. She put me on birth control because the doctor said so. With new evidence and research and medication today, if the early signs of endometriosis would be like, I guess, noticing certain pain, would it be ultrasounds? Would it be excessive headaches? Like, what are the early symptoms of that we can
Right,
look
right.
out?
So the early symptoms would be the pain, especially during menses, primarily during, but it's going to depend on where those endometriotic cysts are located, because they're like
Oh,
little cysts. Um, yes, we can do CT scan, we can do an ultrasound, um, and to do further evaluation, and then more therapeutic with laparotomy. So
okay,
exploratory laparotomy. And we can
gotcha.
go in and hopefully turn that exploratory laparotomy into a therapeutic one where those cysts are removed.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Eh,
this is things that we can detect early on that can ultimately preserve the womb care, the womb area to give birth later on.
Yeah. So let's look at a typical scenario. Let's look at a 21-year-old who's having increasing pain that she hasn't had in the past during the time of her cycle.
Mhm.
She goes to the doctor. The doctor's likely going to not do anything invasive at first. That's okay.
Okay.
So she does that, and it doesn't alleviate her pain. Our next step then would be to do an imaging just to make sure that there's nothing, that overt that we can see, any tumors growing. The cysts are not always so obvious. So it's actually going to just be the next step that we do the imaging study, our ultrasound or CT scan. But the ultimate way to diagnose it would be to do that laparotomy or laparoscopy. Okay.
Okay.
So that's what we would have to do next. She would have to then make sure that she's kind of staying on the doctor with it. Make sure you're following up with your appointments. Don't miss your appointments and make
Mhm.
sure that you highlight this is not getting better. And I do want to take a moment to, just so I don't miss those individuals who have experienced endometriosis that is not related to their cycle, and that they have pain outside of the time of their period or their menses. There are many women who will have pelvic pain throughout. So I want to acknowledge that as well. It's not just exclusive to your menses.
Okay. 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 Cool. Um,
Yeah. So early
again,
detection, making sure they stay on it. Don't just assume that's healthcare professionals. Don't just assume that this is just someone who has what we call metromenorrhagia or a painful heavy menses. No.
okay. So these are things we got to look out for. And I'm glad to know that there are certain things that women can do to, again, be aware of it. Because I get so much of that. Like, how do I alleviate the pain? Can I still have children? Is a myomectomy a way to save your uterus to have a baby, or is it just better to relieve all kind of pain to just get a hysterectomy altogether?
The
So
myomectomy is typically better for fibroids. For endometriosis, no, not so much.
yeah,
Um,
okay, good to know. Okay, and signs of
yeah,
PCOS, like I said, were they like literally heavy bleeding? Well, I guess, I never knew the importance of paying attention to your high blood pressure and your blood sugar levels because, again, who told me? Um,
yeah,
how would someone even have early detection of that? For me, again, it was the excessive periods. I'd bleed through pad after pad after pad, hour after hour after hour, ibuprofen. Sometimes I still don't understand how I'm alive because I'd be in so much pain. I would take like maybe 800 milligrams. My doctor would prescribe it to me and say, do not take these, only every 8 hours. And by hour 6, I'm popping another one because I'm in too much pain.
oh, so much pain. Let's talk
Yeah.
about it. One of the things you mentioned earlier was weight gain. So we'll get into it really quickly. Just the fundamental aspect of PCOS is that this is a condition in which there's cysts on the ovaries, right? As you're aware. Those cysts on the ovaries are happening by way of a connection between your pituitary and your ovaries. So there's this connection between the pituitary and the ovaries. The pituitary tells the ovaries how much of what hormone to secrete. So there's a disruption there. There's a problem there. One of the primary hormones is going to be your testosterone. Um, so the testosterone is increased in the female with PCOS. So a lot of times you'll also have females who do not have a period at all. Amenorrhea is what we call that. And then of course, where there's an increase in testosterone, they may also have an increase in hair growth in certain areas that you would not expect it, like the chin,
Oh,
the
it's
chest, the
weird.
back.
I have to pluck
Did
my
you
chin.
experience that?
I mean, my beard. That's what I call it. It sucks. It
Yeah,
sucks.
yeah. That's one of the cardinal signs in women, even if they have not sought, healthcare, the help from healthcare professional, one of the first things they may notice little spikes there. So again, changes, even if they're younger, sometimes changes in facial features, changes in their voice. It just depends on how extreme, and of course, changes in their cycle. But another thing is there is a link with PCOS and diabetes. So oftentimes we will see pre-diabetes because typically we see it in our younger females. So pre-diabetes as well. So yeah, those are some things. And then also one of the things I wanted to mention about weight gain, you mentioned that as well. When you're
Yeah.
looking at extreme levels of estrogen, not so much as testosterone, I'll put that one on the side for a moment. Because sometimes the hormones are, for lack of a better expression, out of whack. When the estrogen is really high, estrogen throws signals to what we call our adipocyte cells, which are our fat cells.
Mhm.
Estrogen loves to keep the body warm and it promotes storage. So the more estrogen that a female has, the more fat deposition they will have. Estrogen is very keen. It likes fat in certain places, the breast, the thighs, also the abdomen, the abdominal area. So these are areas that you typically, especially the breast and the thighs, you'll see more fat deposition in females. So that's owed to our estrogen.
Okay. And
Yeah. So
you know,
when you talk about birth control pills, I meant to bring that in. You were mentioning how that was used as a form of treatment for your PCOS. So that's where the weight gain comes in. It.
gotcha. So that's where the metformin comes in because metformin helps try to regulate the blood sugar a little bit. Well, quite a bit. Because I know if I were not to take my metformin, my foot swells up. And my doctor said it's your blood sugar. Because are you still eating breads? Are you still eating carbs? Like your body is not breaking down those foods, which is causing the inflammation. And the medicine is supposed to help. Because every time I'm off and on with the metformin and we go back and forth. And then my OBGYN, she'll say, try um this type of vitamin to take, this type of vitamin to take, because she mentioned estrogen, and then like of course, like what my body's not digesting, which is causing all kinds of eruptions. And I was told, and you're pre-diabetic. She said the good news is it's reversible. Diabetes is not. And a big part of it to not get to diabetes, no, it is. Wait,
Yes. We can talk about that one later.
okay,
Not
okay.
that you're wrong, but we've been wrong about it. Not that you're wrong. We've been wrong. we have falsely said this, and we will continue to say it until things get fixed. But go on.
Well, see, and it's I know a lot of it is diet. I do know a lot of it's diet, and I know like it's hard for me. I mean, look, I like cake. Okay, I like cake,
Me
and
too.
I know, but cake don't like me.
And so
And
need cookies.
I oh, he's absolutely hate me, and we'll get to that in a minute. We talk about miscarriages, but I it's something that I was very fearful of because diabetes doesn't run in my family. And so I was like, well, I can reverse this. And the only way to reverse it for me would be like, oh, so I've got to lose a whole bunch of weight. He's like, there's that part. She's like, that's that part. But it's heavy diet. Like you can lose 100 pounds, but if you keep eating a certain way, it's going to trigger your blood sugar levels. And so with PCOS, it's like, I don't know how to like, because your blood pressure, you can check your blood pressure, but how do you check your blood sugar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are ways that you can check and monitor your blood sugar. And I also want to make this point as well. We actually do prescribe metformin to patients with PCOS, even when they're not pre-diabetic as well. So metformin has some way of helping to regulate the hormones as well. The pathology and etiology of that is not well understood at this moment, but it can do that as well. So I do want to put that plug out there as well. Because you may have some listeners that say, well, my doctor put it on it, but he didn't mention or she didn't mention prediabetes. So we will still prescribe it even in the absence of prediabetes.
Okay, that's true. Because whenever I say I forget if I go see another doctor and they say you're on metformin, are you diabetic? I'm like, no. Goes okay, that's fine. So and I say I have PCOS, and they just go no problem, and it kind of move forward.
Yeah.
So that makes a whole lot of sense. So with that being said, if a woman has these symptoms and she goes to her doctor again, taking the notes, go see the doctor, advocating for herself, if the doctor just says just take this and take that and she feels dismissed, what do you do?
Yeah, I think that is very appropriate for her to let the doctor know, I don't understand. I would like to understand why. I have this saying, and I feel this strongly, wholeheartedly. This comes from part of my background as being a teacher as well. Education is the genesis of compliance, meaning that when we educate someone, when we provide them with information, that's the beginning of them being, well, we don't like to use the word compliant anymore in medicine, but adherent to what the therapeutic care plan is. If I tell you why I'm doing this or why I feel you should do it, you're more likely to do it. You're
Right.
in agreement with me. It makes sense.
Right.
So we do have to take that moment to provide education. And again, going back to what we mentioned earlier, when you go in to see your doctor and you show your doctor that you are in tune with what's going on, even if you're uncertain about all aspects, that's okay.
Right.
But at least you're following. You know that you're taking this medication for that reason. You've been checking your blood sugar. You've been checking, and it doesn't have to be every day. It just depends on what's going on with you. You're checking your hypertension. You're on a diet plan. You're showing that doc, I'm partnering with you to get me better.
Gotcha.
Tell me more. Give me the information that I need so that this partnership can be strengthened and we can both get to that end goal.
Okay. So, but a big part of them ensuring that they receive like the care they deserve, would that mean multiple appointments with that doctor? Is that okay? Like, for example, if I'm like, I'm going through, growing a beard, can't lose weight, I want to have a baby, but my blood sugar is a mess. Instead of trying to do it all in one appointment, is it better for a person to say, okay, can I come back for this later? Can I come back for this? So then they can address the bits and pieces as they go along, or is it just better to just address the top three things and then overcome those three things and then address the rest later?
So if you're seeing your primary care, I know that was just an example, but if you're seeing your primary care physician, they're likely going to address those top three things, get those things underway, and then we can talk about other things that are not as pressing. So let's say that it is one of your concerns is so that you can better control the PCOS so that you can have a baby. If it's your primary care physician, they're likely going to refer you to a specialist in that area anyway. If that primary care physician, which we had seen this trend for some time, is kind of easing up some women were going to their OBGYN and having their OBGYN to be their primary care. A lot of OBGYN doctors they try to steer away from that quite a bit, because it was taking away time from some of the other patients that really were critical in that aspect of their practice. So, having someone in just to take care of their blood pressure or better manage their blood pressure was taken away from some of the other patients had OBGYN.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because for a long time I had one doctor. Like, it was just like, I see like the lady who gives me pap smear, that's the lady. And they're like, no, that's not your general practitioner. I was like, well, why not? What do I need to see the other person for? Because you have high blood pressure. I'm like, okay. And the person that would help with managing this is not necessarily the same person to manage that. And I used to get so irritated with my regular doctor, because he's like, okay, I need to send you to go see this person. I'm like, why can't you do it? And he's like, because I'm not a gut person. I don't do pap smears. This is what I do. And I'm just like, what I don't need to come to you then. So I would just focus on one person. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because you're right. Someone who's taking care of the womb may not necessarily be the same one to take care of the blood pressure. They need to be aware, and I my doctors tend to be quite in sync with each other. Like, they have the same chart on my chart. They'll look over it. But I am glad you mentioned the importance of having other types of doctors, not depending on one to be the end all be all.
That's right. And I do want to say something though. Every family practice doctor, every internal medicine doctor, they are all trained to do pap smears. So it can happen. It's just not preferred. In rural settings, it does still happen. Those doctors will still do those if they have time to, if they're able to, and if they're their preference. Now, as far as going to your OBGYN, that's the doctor that they can refill your prescriptions that you've gotten from your primary care. And they can save you a lot of time going back and forth to your primary care if that's their preference to do it. But when there are changes and when your condition becomes a little bit unstable, it's not as stable, then it's definitely advisable for you to go to that specialist.
That's a good point. Because when my GYN said you don't have to be on metformin, you could start to take these vitamins. When I saw the general practitioner for something completely different, the family doctor, he's like, no, you need to be on metformin. Look at your feet. And he was examining how like swollen my feet were, and goes, your hands are swollen. He was like poking my arm. He's like, you need to be like, you're swelling, the inflammation in your body. And he put me in that. And he said, let's see what the metformin does to see if the inflammation goes down. He just disagreed. And I was like, all right, well, fine. Like, and then when
that happens sometimes, right?
I emailed the GYN, and she was just like, well, let's see if the swelling goes down. If it does, then you need to be on it, because then, and if the inflammation stays up, then it's something else going on that we need to look at. So that's a good point, because they don't always necessarily, agree. And I just,
right.
Yeah. When it comes to pregnancy, this is the biggest fear I have, because Black maternal health is a big hot topic in our community. When I was pregnant with my daughter, I was over 35. I knew I was high risk. This is pregnancy number 4, and I didn't miscarry. I was with the fertility clinic for the first trimester. Second trimester, I was with my regular GYN doctor's office, and then I had to see a specialist. It was quite the journey, because I had to see 2 different doctors. They kept an eye on me and my fibroid and my baby. And I remember getting towards the end, and I was, my doctor, regular GYN, she was having a baby around the same time. She goes, I cannot deliver you if I'm giving birth to. And I'm like, I'm going to die if you don't do this. And she's like, you're not going to die. I was just like, I don't even know who's going to deliver my baby. And then I remember I had a complete meltdown, because I was like, Black women are dying. And like, if you're not there to save me, she's like, okay. So they had to bring in the doctor that was supposed to deliver me. And she even said, if I'm not on call that day, she goes, I will likely be there. But just in case, I'm just like, what the is going on? What do you mean you may not be there? You better get out of your bed, lady, and save me. And I was so terrified. I'm like, I'm already high risk. Y'all got me seeing specialists every other week. And then you're telling me you have to keep an eye on this fibroid that showed up out of nowhere. So, they both her, the nurse, one of the nurses there, they kind of went through, because I was going to have a C-section. what the process would be like, told me what my options were in regards of what's going to happen the day of the C-section. They even decided like what my due date was, like how can we get it as close as possible, because with C-sections, like it can't be on the due date, it has to be before then, and what the risks were. Like they went over that. I was so terrified that something would be rushed. I'm already cut open. Would I bleed out? Like I literally had a meltdown, a complete meltdown, because I wasn't prepared for. I keep in mind, I knew the whole time my doctor was pregnant. I don't know why I didn't think, well, we got pregnant around the same time, so she should be able to deliver me and then go do what she got to do. I don't know why I didn't put two and two together, but it was terrifying. And so,
Yeah.
luckily, I think I had a very good team of doctors and nurses that were very supportive. That's not always the case, because we'll talk about pregnancy number 5 in a minute. But what can women do to kind of prepare themselves for pregnancy and post-pregnancy? Because it seems like towards the end of pregnancy and during delivery is where we're seeing the high deaths. What is happening? And why is it happening to us?
Yeah. So that's a pretty loaded question. But before I get into it, a couple of things I want to bring out from your story that you just shared.
Yeah.
Number one, that was a prime example of self-advocating. You did that. Go you.
Yay.
And I love the fact that the team that was brought on to help with your care, that they took the time to educate you and give you your options. That's always so important for us to make sure that the patient knows that they have options. So options are very important when there are options. Right. Of course. And then also the support that you receive. So I just wanted to make those comments because the story that you just shared was very important. It highlighted those 3 things. It highlighted self-advocacy. It highlighted education and the need for that, the options that they provided for you, and also the support that they gave you as well. So they didn't dismiss you. It didn't sound like from your story, even though you explained how, upset you were, they listened to you. Yeah. And they understood where it came from. So I like that. And that's the way that things should work, in circumstances like that. But you were asking about why is it happening to us? We don't know, but there are some things that are on our radar. Since I've been studying more in public health, global health, one of the central things that I've heard, and it's quite disappointing to me, I don't like it, but it's not a whole lot I can say to oppose it, is that Black women have, at this point, when we look at it globally, the worst state of health. Why? Why are these things happening to us? Some of the things that I've noticed, especially when I see women with diabetes, one of the first things I want to tell people when they have it, and they are generally healthy, some of the people that I'm considering here, the food in America was not made for us to consume. That is number one.
Yeah.
I have a big issue with the things that the FDA allows. That is an entirely different podcast.
Gotcha.
But the things that we are consuming, it's not made for us. I don't know how to say this without sounding as if there's some type of complex that I have. So I'm trying to fish for the best diplomatic way to say it. But there are certain people that I feel the things that they consume should be closest to nature. Those are people that have more of a natural aspect to their being. I hope I said that in a way that can be received.
So, because we keep it real, because womanhood is it's quite, it's very ghetto, but it's hard. Are you saying, just be flat, is it better? Are you saying it's for particularly Black women, we should be eating a certain way? Is it more vegetables, less meat, less grease, more raw? Like, what do you mean?
Definitely more vegetables, fruits and vegetables, nuts. These are more of your natural things. I don't want to sound like I'm putting everyone in a box in something that seems very, not likely for them to be able to attain. Meat, yes, you can eat meat. There are people that actually have to have their meat. They feel like that. But there are cautions to it. Do it in moderation. I think a lot of us can reduce some of the meat that we are meat products. I want to, if I can, take a moment. I know we're not really talking about diabetes. and high cholesterol right now. But if I can take a moment to explain what has been very well explained in many documentaries, actually, but has been shot down by some of your most trusted industries, I want to take that moment really quickly. In our body, we have cells. In general, they're called animal cells. There is this expression in chemistry, like dissolves like. On the outside of our cells is a fat layer. It's animal fat layer. So when you eat something with animal fat, cheese, I know cheese is great, love it. Meat, steak, anything that has animal fat, even coconut oil. Don't be tricked by coconut oil, another topic. But these are things that have what we call saturated fat. One way to remember this, saturated sucks. It's solid on standing. So they have a high level of saturated fat. When they enter into the body, they enter into the cell, like dissolves like. When they enter into the cell, they actually block other nutrients from being able to be taken up into the cell where they're needed. One of the most important nutrients that needs to go into the cell to give you life, give you energy, is glucose. If glucose can't go into the cell, where is it going to go? It's going to remain in the blood. You prick your finger, you check your glucose is high because it's not in the cells, it's in the blood.
Got it.
And when it stays hanging out, here's another illustration. When it hangs out in the blood, it's just like if you got up at 2 o'clock in the morning and made yourself a quick snack and fixed a little juice. Let's just take Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
If you fix a little bit of that speck of Kool-Aid, got on the countertop, you didn't see it, didn't worry about it, you went on back to bed. After your snack, you get up in the morning, what is that little spot of Kool-Aid going to look like? It's going to be sticky.
Yeah.
It's going to be sticky. Something that glucose does, it's in the body when it sticks, we call it glycosylation. So if there's too much glucose in the blood, it begins to glycosylate on our tissues. There's been much research here lately that says when it happens in the brain, it increases the chances of Alzheimer's. Very solid research on that. When it happens, it's happening all throughout the blood. When it affects the eyes, we hear about diabetic retinopathy. Anyone with diabetes we recommend that they then establish care with an ophthalmologist. It affects the kidneys, diabetic nephropathy. They have to have a nephrologist. It affects the nerves. The blood vessels that are supplying the nerves are so tiny. That's diabetic neuropathy. And there's a host of other areas that it affects. So glucose, animal fats, animal products, just summarizing everything I just said, I think that was pretty loaded.
No.
Animal products will do that. So we have to keep it in moderation, almost like a special treat it should be. Maybe even once a week, twice a week if you just got to have your meat. But please, I beg that everyone listening, try to reduce your animal products.
I'm really glad you mentioned this. Okay. All right. So while I was pregnant with baby Artis, I had a seizure. I was 4 months, and you already know I was panicked, and I was all over the place. I didn't even know what was happening. I think I ate a grilled cheese sandwich, okay, and then seized. They called it a grand mal seizure. When I went to the doctor, they said, well, it looks like you're not eating enough, because I wasn't. I'm nauseated, I'm tired, I'm working, and so he said, I need you to eat every 2 hours, and they were concerned about blood sugar levels. I was all right after that. Fast forward to December, I'm 8 months pregnant, and I noticed I would kind of zone out and kind of just be spaced out, and I don't remember anything. Now, pause. Fast forward, I had a baby throughout 2023 when my baby was growing before she turned 1. I'd have those same kind of spaced out things, and then some days my husband would find me on the floor, and he's like, you okay? And I'm like, I don't know what happened. I'd wake up with bruises. I'd space out, and basically I think one day he found me on the floor choking on my vomit, but no one knew what happened. So the ambulance came. So I remember the last time the ambulance came, they threw a $1,600 bill at me, and I was mad. I said, get out of my house.
Oh, I bet you're mad, huh?
Yeah, I was like, get out of my house. No, y'all can't stay. About a month later, the same thing happened, and the ambulance nah, fam, you need to go to the doctor. And I'm like, my baby's starting to get on a sleeping pattern. And I'm like, and he's working downstairs and baby sleeping. I was like, I didn't want to go, but the ambulance people were like, you really need to go. Went there, the neurologist got there. She's like, it sounds like you're having grand mal. And because I was having them really back to back, but I didn't know I was having seizures. I would just wake up on the floor, and I remember my shoulders would hurt. Like if I got on, I think one day I went to go ride my Peloton and I fell on the floor. I just woke up, and my husband said I stumbled in the room completely dazed out, and he's like, what's going on? And I can't talk. And then the continual ones that happened even throughout the year was just, I would zone out. I tried to hide. They were seizures. They were mild seizures, and they were grand mal, like throughout the year. It was, by the time I saw a neurologist, they're like, before we diagnose you with epilepsy, let's see if it's hormone related. I will say that when I got pregnant the 5th time, I miscarried, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I remember I ate Chinese food because I was emotional, and I put like the little orange sauce and drank like a drink, and then here we are again back at the hospital because I had another grand mal, and they're like, this has to be related to sugar. And I finally got an appointment with a neurologist. He said this could be hormone related because you had a baby, and it takes a while for your hormones to get back together. He said, but you've got to watch your sugar. And I'm wondering now if it was heavy, because I eat meat every day. Okay, every day, because I felt like I needed protein because I have PCOS and I couldn't eat carbs, and I was like, I need energy, so I have to eat meat. I tried to do lean. You add lean, I think probably ate some cake that day, but I remember that day when I had the really grand mal, the bad one, where I was choking on my vomit. It was Chinese food, fried chicken, the little orange duck sauce, and I drank juice. And basically, and I was, at this point, I'm miscarrying, and my hormones are all over the place. And so I had to drastically change my diet this year. It was not easy. But I thought, I was very frustrated when they kept raising the dosages of the medicine I was on, because I'm like, I'm not even eating sugar. What do you want from me? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why am I still seizing? Why am I still struggling with this? And I'm wondering now, is it because, again, I thought I eat meat every day.
Yeah.
If it's not meat, look, your girl likes cheese too. Okay, I do. And I'm wondering.
I am not judging you, trust me.
But now I'm wondering if it would this have helped, because like you said, the link to, and I read a lot about like how to manage your seizures and how dieting works. And I'm wondering now, because I am a Black woman, would cutting the meat out the diet, like at least in half, because when I say I eat meat every day, it's lean, but I'm eating it. If it's not chicken, I ate some steak yesterday, or it's fish. Because I felt like if I eat anything else and vegetables, I'm not going to have enough energy. I'm going to be tired. Where am I going to get the protein from? And that was the struggle.
Yeah. So I think I need to be a little responsible with this right now. I made a general statement. It may not affect everyone like that. One of the things that you could do is you could look at your family and see if there's anyone else that has these issues, like diabetes and hypertension. That could be your immediate family. That could be a telltale sign that your body also responds the same way. So some people can eat meat every day and not develop some of these issues. There are some people, but I think for overall speaking, for the majority of people of color, particularly in the U.S., I would say that I don't think that we have the adjustments that we need to process the food that's here. As we do. I'm not going to say that about you right off, but it's something to consider. And possibly if you're too, maybe something that you can attempt to see if you've seen a difference in your health if you reduce your meat. So I would challenge you to attempt that, to see, just to be careful and monitor all signs. I'm not able to do your lab work and look at your labs or anything like that. So I have to be responsible in this moment and just watch how I give medical advice without looking at your full medical record.
I'm going to try that, because I get so frustrated when I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Why am I having like a mild seizure? And like, it can be very mild to the point where it goes away, because seizures don't last very long. but it's the recovery. My muscles get tight. I'm exhausted for days.
Yeah.
It takes a lot out of me. And
Yeah.
but I do eat meat every day. So I'm gonna see how a modification would help, because I don't. My neurologist is like, we can up the medicine. I'm like, I don't want to go there because the side effects of that is already enough. So I'm gonna give that a try, and then I'll get back to you on that and see how that works for me, because both of my parents have hypertension. My mother, was also has gut issues. Actually, my father does too. So I wonder how that really, and they're big meat eaters. They're very big. Like my mother, when I told her one time I was vegan, she still slipped in meat in my food. Like she did not care. She thought it was insane. Yeah, she's just like, I mean, just eat a little bit. I'm like, Ma. And so
it doesn't make sense for them. You're not gonna eat
meat, right? So there's something I'm gonna test for myself there. So we're gonna try that, and I'm gonna let y'all know. I'm gonna let y'all know. The other thing.
So you have tried it before?
I have a long time ago. But your girl likes like fried chicken. I don't know how to act. I did it for a few years.
So how long did you try it for?
It was for a few years. I've done it. So I did it one time. Wow. Yeah, I did. I want to say I was a vegetarian. I was not vegan. I was a vegetarian. I didn't eat fish. I didn't eat any type of meat. And I was doing well. I was on a diet, and it worked really well. I lost a ton of weight. I was going through a lot emotionally, and I was heavy on juicing, heavy on smoothies and salads, and I just wasn't eating meat. And then here I am about to tell myself I was probably my best health then. So yeah, but then it just seemed like I got to grad school, and I'm taking shots. Hey, have a slice of pizza. You can eat some cheese. You want the pepperoni? And then here I am back to eating meat.
One slice won't hurt.
Yeah, it's no
so we tell ourselves.
Yeah, I wasn't even eating cheese. And I'd find even alternatives. But if I even went there, and I went to grad school, and university, when you're there, it's like I don't have time for nothing. And I did not go back to eating frozen foods. I know that much. And I still juice. But I all of a sudden, after my third miscarriage, they were like, you need to have a high protein diet. I didn't know what that looked like, other than I guess you have to eat meat every day. Eat meat, eat cheese, and that's what a lot of it was. I got a PCOS diet chart, and almost every single meal had meat in it. If not meat, cheese. Like I'd get the cheese sticks, which I never ate before, and just loaded it up. And here I am now. So I'm
honestly
gonna try
have to admit, I'm gonna have to look at why we recommend a high protein diet for that. I'll have to look at some other resources on that one, because I'm unsure of that. But I've heard of it before.
I mean, I was told it would help with level out my blood sugar levels, which is why, again, my GYN at the time, she said, she goes, stay away from starches. If you're going to eat meat, eat lean. Right. Mm-hmm. But she said, have a high protein diet. And then she just gave me like this little pamphlet, and then she didn't go over it because again, she's not a nutritionist, but she said, try to eat more lean meats, and high protein diet, which is what she mainly said because I had PCOS. And it did seem to help with the metformin, but I'm gonna see what happens if I cut in half. I ain't gonna tell y'all that I'm going vegan. I'm not promising that. But I do want to see if I see a drastic change, particularly because I am probably 6 weeks seizure free. And that's a huge accomplishment for me, that was having them like once a week, sometimes multiple times in a week this year alone. And I'd break down crying as soon as it happens, because then again, the recovery time is what to the point where I can't drive and lose my driving privileges. I can't be alone with my child because God forbid I'm holding her, something happens. It's like I know I need supervision all the time. And so I want to get to the point where I'm healthy enough to drive again, to be alone and be okay with my child again, and be alone without my husband worrying if I'm in the shower, I'm going to fall, and you know what I mean? Like physically healthy. So I'm going to see, and I've also journal too, because I journaled what would happen before the seizures and how long it's been. So I'm going to try this and see how it affects my health and the energy as well, because I'm always tired, but I have a toddler, so That could also be it too. But I am going to see how this works. Miscarriage wise, or even post pregnancy wise, I know that there's certain vitamins we should take. Let's take a step back. So, a big part of what I think I remember seeing on Facebook and the group that we're in, is what we can do. I think vitamins take before we give birth to help prevent hemorrhaging during postpartum. Is that what it was?
Right.
Okay.
So the benefit of calcium in preeclampsia is that it's known to help lower the blood pressure. One of the cardinal signs of preeclampsia is elevated blood pressure. When preeclampsia begins to affect the kidneys, and then also possibly a person having seizure, that's when we call it eclampsia. Eclampsia was formerly known as toxemia. So women of the 80s and 90s probably would refer to that as toxemia. So yes, but calcium, research on calcium has been known to show that it decreases the benefit, well, not decreases benefit, but decreases the effects of eclampsia.
And that's what's also like helping women survive pregnancies, which I hate to say that we have to survive a pregnancy because this is a natural thing for us, or should be a natural thing for us. But that would be very helpful in women successfully giving birth and, continuing on with, becoming a mother or continuing their motherhood. So are there any other things that women can do to help with that pregnancy, postpartum era, I guess, time and space to help us save our lives?
Yeah. Let's talk about postpartum hemorrhage.
Yeah.
So in a recent talk, we were discussing how postpartum hemorrhage is the primary cause of death in women, particularly women of color. The numbers are staggering for women of color as far as when compared to other women. Why are so many women of color dying in the postpartum era, primarily from PPH? So what PPH is when there's excessive bleeding after giving birth. Now, what we've noticed is that there does seem to be a link with what we spoke on earlier, which is fibroids. Let's talk about why fibroids can contribute to this. So fibroid is actually a muscle, within your muscle. So it's a tumorous muscle that develops. What happens is the uterus starts to contract. We know that that's how the baby gets expelled out. But the uterus continues to contract even after birth. And when the uterus is contracting, it's actually shrinking back down, and it's clamping down on those blood vessels that were associated with nourishing the baby.
Yeah.
So it's actually promoting closure and clotting of those blood vessels that's flowing. When there are fibroids there, it interrupts the uterus's ability to contract, and it causes a disruption. The uterus cannot effectively contract, something we call atony. T-O-N-Y, referring to the tone of the muscle tone. So when there's atony or an atonic uterus, there's a difficult time in the uterus contracting to release and expel the products from birth, including the blood vessels. So we'll see an increase in that. We will also see active bleeding. And remember what we mentioned earlier about active bleeding? Yeah. It looks more bright red.
Right.
That's right. So that's one of the things that we'll see.
Okay.
I kind of want to take a moment to share an experience that I had myself, a very personal experience. Never really talked about it before, but I did experience a miscarriage. And during that time, I lost quite a bit of blood. I actually saw the blood running from my body. And I was like, this is not normal. So I actually, when they say if you soak more than 1 pad per hour, you're looking at 3-4 pads. It was not normal. It was terrible. If any of you experience this, please immediately go to the emergency room.
Yeah.
So as far as the treatment that we have for postpartum hemorrhage, the treatment are these things. If you have fibroids, speak with your doctor about it. Talk with your doctor and make sure your doctor knows that that your doctor provide you with options actually of what you can do and that you would like to be treated in the event for PPH. Some of the treatment involves hysterectomy. I know some women are not big fans of that, but hold on, there's another option. And there's also something called tranexamic acid, which is something we give patients when they have to get ready to have surgery. They've been on blood thinners. We'll give them something called tranexamic acid, and it will help the blood to clot. So that is something also. Make sure your doctor is aware that you are on board with either one of those forms of treatment, both if needed. The thing about that, talking with your doctor ahead of time, making sure your doctor's zoned in and focused on your care and it's well documented, is that tranexamic acid has to be given within 3 hours of labor in order to be effective. Now, let's face it, a lot of women don't necessarily notice the increase in bleeding until a little bit later. In the beginning, we think it's all normal, right? We expect there to be quite a bit of blood loss. But when it continues is when we notice that there is a problem.
And this is post giving birth.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So they would have to give the tranexamic acid within 3 hours postpartum.
Oh.
After labor. Yeah. So that's why when you have fibroids, and you know you have fibroids, maybe even the doctor discovers them at some point during your, by doing an ultrasound during your pregnancy, make sure that they have it well documented of, you know, what to look for with you. This is newer information. I have to admit, maybe not all doctors know this.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not all keenly aware, you know, and ready to treat.
Yeah.
In that circumstance. So that's something I have to make sure that I say. So you guys are going to be ahead of the game with that.
Right. You know, I'm glad you mentioned that because I know that when I gave birth, again, I had a C-section. I thought I wouldn't bleed anymore. I thought it was just my stomach. She's like, no, you're going to vaginally bleed and keep an eye on it. And I know that we're supposed to change our pads like every hour now. You asking me to change my pad. I done gave birth. I'm tired. But essentially, that's my signal that everything's okay. Yeah. Would you agree with that? Like, well, checking your pad.
You said not having to change your pad
every
hour?
No. Changing it every hour. That's like kind of checking to make sure that I'd be okay. Because if my pad is filling up every hour, that's a red flag, correct?
That's right. That's right. I would not say that you have to every hour either, because actually it'd be pretty good to monitor your flow, especially in the beginning. So you can, you know, keep your pad in place if you're not soaking it every hour. So the key thing is that pad becoming soaked with blood within an hour, and you're having to add a second pad within an hour. So that can be a sign. Okay. Yeah, you should be able to wear your pad for hours. Okay. Not 4 hours, but FOR hours.
Gotcha.
I want to be clear on that. For hours before having to change it.
Okay. So calcium for preeclampsia would be very helpful.
Preeclampsia.
Would you say we could take calcium before we get pregnant too, just to get our bodies in order? Okay.
Especially if you're over the age of 35.
Gotcha. So you heard that, over age 35, because I think that that's pre-pregnancy. I know that I always tell women pre-pregnancy wise, act as if you are. So you wouldn't drink, you wouldn't act a fool, you would take care of yourself. So before you get pregnant, act as if you are. So I definitely think that, and then looking at the amount of calcium we take, and there's calcium in our foods too, yeah?
There's calcium in our, glad you mentioned that, because I just went straight to supplements, which is another reason why supplements are not really hammering down on making sure it's 100%, because you are going to get some calcium from, you know, what you eat, like your animal products, dairy products as well, cheese, and also some green leafy vegetables also. Okay,
so kale and stuff like that? Huh?
Yes. Gotcha. And chocolate. See? Yes, kale as well.
Okay, well that's good to know.
We get to be a little naughty sometimes.
Right, just like, I have my moments, okay? Let me have my moments. But that's good to know. So it's just like if you have the supplements and then you are eating it, it's a good balance to try to get.
It's a good balance,
okay,
right.
Okay. So is there anything else that women can kind of do to prevent, I hate to say, to survive pregnancy that we can take or do?
I know. It's unfortunate that we have to say that. Let me go back to the calcium really quickly. Because sometimes when I mention calcium, and I'll come back to that question, many individuals will ask, how do they know? It's, you know, just reading the back of the label, the nutrition label. I prefer to go by the percentage, but some people actually want the actual milligrams. So I think it's about 1,200 to 1,500 on average, and up to 2 grams if you go into your pregnancy already deficient of calcium. Your doctor would have to check that. You'd have to have your lab work on that one. But, or if you've had a bone scan, which most women under 65 have not had a bone scan. But for some reason, if you're already deficient of calcium, then you take 2 grams until your doctor tells you, okay, you can move it back down to 1,500 or 1,200. I would prefer to tell people 1,200 during pregnancy, just because you're losing calcium from your baby. And if you're pregnant with twins, more than that.
Gotcha. Well, that's good. Very good advice.
So you mentioned your question again. I'll get you to restate it if you don't mind. I think it was about
Is there any other things we can do to, again, I hate saying it like this, to survive pregnancy?
Yeah.
Anything we can do,
take? So going to the doctor early on, having your first check. Some women will wait. Oh, I've done this before. They're just gonna tell me this. They're just gonna tell me that. But sometimes, especially when you're older, it's a good idea to go ahead. And typically, if you're over the age of 35, they'll call it, we know, geriatric pregnancy, which I do not like that term either. I know a lot of women don't, and I don't. If we can change that, I'm going to try to change that. But you do. There's a protocol for you to have certain tests done, and those tests can detect some changes that you may undergo or your baby early on. So that's one thing, and that's something I can say in general about health. Keep your doctor's appointments, and when you show up, show up. Make sure the doctor knows that you are in tune and this is a partnership in your appointment. And that's the same for OBGYN. Okay. The other thing we did mention is kind of like a recap, watching your diet as well. As I mentioned, this American diet is not designed for everyone. Some people are just very special beings and their bodies should be managed accordingly. So that's a compliment to you. You're not designed to eat everything.
Right.
Or consume everything. I'll use that term, consume. And a lot of times we know that white sugar, is the culprit to a lot of diseases and illnesses. So yeah, and when you're pregnant and you're hungry, that's so much easier said than done. I'm aware of it. We're human. I'm not perfect. I still have to say my prayers about my diet. When I'm praying for my parents, I said, Lord, please include me as well. Yes.
Sugar, I had to like break up with sugar because they were such a trigger for the seizures I was having. And I just never forget, I had one sugar cookie that pretty much almost landed me in the hospital. Well, and then it's like, man, a cookie, and it was during the holidays. And it was like so delicious. And I was like, this thing's going to take me out. So now I don't eat cookies at all. Everything in our house is low sodium, low sugar. It's not fun here. And I've adjusted because it's like, I'm too scared. And the thing is, I told myself, like, don't change diet off of fear. Just change it for longevity of life. And sugar was the hardest thing. Because like watching to see how much like carbs is in something, how much sugar, what is this type of sugar, what is this type of sugar, it's ridiculous. And now it's like I refuse. Like I won't even make a cookie. Like I used to eat, and I'm shamefully gonna admit this, like I need a box of cookies by myself because I love sweets, but sweets didn't love me. It would cause so many issues. So sugar is something we truly really do need to pay attention to how it affects our bodies. It's critical because I know my body rejected it for years, to the point where I think I even had a part of the vegetarian diet was also gluten-free because I would just get so puffy. I think I got to a point where I had to take an EpiPen because
really?
My throat would close after I would eat something like cake or something, or not either cake or like some white bread and such. And I'm still very careful on how much bread I eat, if I eat it at all, because my body doesn't react very well to it.
You have an allergy possibly? Are you aware of what things you may be allergic to?
So when I saw the doctor that I saw, like I did an allergy test and they said I had a sensitivity. So he actually suggested that I don't do a full gluten diet. He said, because then your body's going to basically say, okay, well, this is not what we eat. The minute it's inserted in your system, that's when the throat is going to close. So he said,
that was a great advice.
Yeah. He said, what I would do is, he said, you really have to limit it and be aware. So if I have like pizza or something like that, It's just, that's it. Like, I'm not gonna have it the next day, the next day, the next day, because I'm gonna be really sick. And I haven't had to need my EpiPen in years, but it was stuff like that. Like, I'd get so sick, throat, I couldn't breathe. I'd have to ask what's in this and that type of stuff, which led me to have more of a vegetarian diet, because I was just not feeling well. And then, and throughout the years as I'm getting older, I would see, did this affect the pregnancies? And all my pregnancies were in my 20s, and it just would end with a miscarriage. But I always wondered, I was like, what is causing this? Until the third one, they said, well, looks like it's PCOS. Big things, PCOS is the gut. And so it's quite the change. It's amazing how I didn't know how much diet affected me, but how was I to know? No one told me. And so I really want our listeners and watchers to know, like, there's a bridge here. There's a bridge of things that we are responsible for, how to work with our doctors, and how to holistically work with ourselves,
That's right. I love the way you said that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I am so grateful that you were available to talk to, because again, like, I truly believe there's a way to be healthy without going the holistic route, without working with your doctor and thinking that you're alone, because we have insurance for a reason. We have doctors for a reason. These are, again, people who practice medicine. And I think having a professional you work with and being responsible for yourself is critical for our health. I'm big on longevity of life. My mother, unfortunately, died in my 30s. Her mother died in her 30s. I intend to break the cycle, that I want to see my grandchildren. My mother and my grandmother didn't get to see their grandchildren. I will. And breaking the cycle is very important to me. And the way to do it, I can do it holistically. I am big on holistic. I drink teas, I yoni steam, I make my own soaps to help balance my hormones, but I also go to the doctor's office. I need them, you know what I mean? Because together, like, I can't do it alone. I do recognize frustrations with doctors, because I've had them. The last pregnancy, again, I didn't advocate for myself because I just assumed everything, but I also knew better. I knew better, and I just didn't say better. For this reason, moving forward, this happened when I get pregnant again, I'll be more prepared with my calcium and be able to communicate, these are my concerns, and I can't be shy about that. I can't be shy, but I'm also not going to be rude. I'm not going to walk in there knowing I'm probably patient number 48, and I need an hour of your time. Like, being more prepared, being aware of what their day looks like, what their time looks like, and how can we work together? Do we need to do multiple appointments? How do we address this and that? And understanding my own health is critical. I think that just talking to you today, I know how to move forward in taking care of my health. And I definitely know y'all know what to do moving forward. And your expertise is so needed in bridging this gap. And I just want to thank you so much for joining the hood and talking with us about our physical health, our wound care health. I so want to thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, and I as much appreciate you for even offering this. So I'm grateful that you have this and have the audience that I was able to speak to, and hopefully it's helped someone today.
I definitely think it is. I definitely think we will, because I get these questions a lot. Like, is this impossible? What do I do? What do I do? And I only know this much from what I've researched. I don't know the medical part, and I don't know the person physically, and I'm not their doctor. So there's only so much I can do. There's only so much you can tell. But I think it always will fall back on, what can you do for yourself? And your tips, I think, will go a long way medical wise and health wise for particularly women of color who are struggling and are fearful of pregnancy, which we don't have to be. So again, I thank you so much for dropping your knowledge and sharing with us. And I can't wait to hear. I know y'all have a lot to say, so drop in the comments. Again, this is Dr. Kristy. She is amazing, y'all. She's smart. Thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you guys so much. All the best, everyone.
Yes.